if you don't have cash confidence, other things are hard to accomplish. So as an entrepreneur, that has to be always number one.
We have great partnerships with. They saw the acquisition and said, oh no, are you taking this in-house, or are you trying to compete with us or make us irrelevant? And the answer is absolutely not. Build great stuff, we're going to use it.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to put it in a visual format.
Yeah, I like it.
Hi, Peter. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited about our episode today because New Charter Journey is something that is so inspirational, not only in the channel, but overall for all entrepreneurs outside of the MSP channel as well, because this is one success story where you start from somewhere and the way you grow, the way you scale, and totally different thinking is new thinking of growth. And I'm super excited about having a conversation with you today.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been quite the journey, and it's been fun to be connected with you and others, along, a lot of this, over the past, 20 plus years now of an industry that, I don't think any of us really started with this in mind. When we started IT companies, it was, it's pretty fun to look back.
Yeah. And, one thing that I always think about, Peter, is that there are companies that are transformational. And then there are companies where they transform their industry. That's like the best in class of best in class. And New Charter is one of those companies where I'm not saying one of those, but it is the one that is transforming our industry, transforming our channel. And I can't think of any other business where they have transformed themselves. And in their journey, they also made a huge impact, transformational impact on the industry as well. So kudos to you and your team for achieving the success.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's funny. People ask me sometimes what got me started in this, or what gets me out of bed in the morning, what I get excited about. And it's interesting. I started an IT business when I was 20, but the biggest thing for me that I learned over time is that I love to build. But I love to build with people as the building blocks. And that's a very different, thing than just building from an architecture perspective, because there's nuance to it. And I know we've talked a lot about that, over the years, that this is a people industry. But the other thing that I want, more than anything, is to do the things that other people, that really no one else is doing, and so for us, I've always enjoyed that, the idea of what rules need to be rewritten, and what rules need to be broken in order for, this to be more successful. It's been a fun industry for that, because there's been a lot of change.
There is so much change. When I started my MSP in 2003, Peter, the MSP, it was not even called MSP. It was more
exactly, yeah.
in New York City. And then you kind of go to conferences, you start talking about who is selling more block of hours, who is doing what in terms of, on-prem technologies. But then the transformation that happened in the last 20 years is so amazing. And in the last decade or so, some MSPs that took this journey of growth and totally different way of growth is just so impressive.
I think the fun part for me is that for every bit of reinvention, and innovation, and that we do to try to revolutionize the industry, it really all it still comes back to the basics, of building value for people, through people. And there's obviously a lot of technology and process around that. But, for as revolutionary, as our future can be, it's going to be based on the same foundation that we started our companies, 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, that is so good. I think everything starts with thinking. And when we know how we are thinking about our thinking, then everything else kind of really falls in place. And love to see that this is how you're thinking, that hey, if you are creating value for the world. There is no recession for you, no matter what's happening in the economic landscape, political landscape, or whatever is happening with tariff and everything else. If you are an entrepreneur and you are an entrepreneurial team and company, and you are creating value for the world, you will always be on the winning side of the thing. So that's great thinking there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thanks. So what do you want to dive into? I know we could talk about, so many
Yeah.
things.
Yes. Yes. So I think one thing that I'm so inspired with the new charter journey is what are 2 to 3 top things that MSP entrepreneurs can do. So learning from your experience, learning from what you have learned, what is your advice to MSPs that are either starting or they are thinking of scaling, growing, with different strategies? It could be through partnership, through collaborations. So, what's your advice to other MSP entrepreneurs?
Yeah. The first piece of advice, and the piece of advice that I will, probably hopefully always put first is listen to your customer more than the industry.
Hmm.
I think that the MSP, the IT services channel is wonderful. We wouldn't have the level of stability or consistency or capability without it. But number one, the number one thing we do is we build value for customers. And the more that you understand your customers, understand the markets, understand where they're going, and listening and watching, not just to what they're saying, but what are they saying that they need, but what do they not even know that they need?
Hmm.
That's a much clear that will be a guiding point for us forever.
Hmm.
To your point, if we are always looking at that, then it's not about the technology. It's not about the major changes. It's about the fact that there's always value to build. So I remember in 2008, the cloud became a big thing, and they said, okay, MSPs, we've got like a 2-year timeline, and then we're not going to be needed, so we have to reinvent ourselves. Well, the reality is we're still doing cloud migrations. You know, nothing went away as long as we were still focused on that client value.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that stay close to your customer, listen generously to your customer, and you will always see where to help, where to create value. So your value creation alignment with the customer friction, as long as you have that mapping done properly as an entrepreneur, as a business, then you will always win.
Yeah, listening to the customer, is point number one. Advice point number two is recognizing that this is and will be a people industry, and so the best way to build value for clients, as we listen to them and understand them, is through people who, building a team that we know has that mindset, that orientation, and that they know how to do that. And so, listen to your customers first, but build the kind of team that knows how to listen to the customers, and drive this. And when we started out, we said, hey, we're going to do something different. We're going to be a people, first IT company. And you're right, MSP wasn't really a term then. But what we learned over time is that it wasn't our choice whether or not this was a people oriented, industry. It is, and so we have to be, people oriented if we want to succeed in the long term. And that's where things get real hard, for MSPs, is because when you start an MSP or you're small and you know your customers and you listen to them, and it's easy for you to look at it and say, okay, I know what they need, I know how to provide those needs, and you build that trust. Well, then you start building a team, and your team has to build that trust, and then you start to build a more scaled team, and it has to extend all the way through your organization, and so we have over 1,300 employees now. And so I'm so far away from, the end, customer employee interactions, but we still have to be able to set the strategy to make sure that goes the way that we need it to. And so when I say building, with people as the building blocks, most companies as they scale lose the personal touch. And in the MSP space, it's all built on personal touch.
Hmm.
So that's, if you look at, a 50 person, a 50 employee MSP, the business definitions would, the government definition of a business would still say that's very much, a very small business. But in our industry, that's really significant. And the reason is because it's very hard to keep that personal touch. And so people, MSPs will hit a ceiling. And if I look at what I'm most proud of and also what we're most focused on at New Charter, it's how do we scale with that personal touch, that agency, that decision making, still being close to the customer. While making sure that we're supporting it, through a central scaled organization. And so customers first, employees support the customers, and you start to build that value chain in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, when we say people first, customers are people, employees are people, strategic partners are people. So I think if our mindset is, okay, we're going to show up to serve humanity and people, and it could be in the customer side of the things or employee part of the things. At the end of the day, people working with people, creating value for each other. If we show up with our unique strengths to create value for others, then everything else fall in place. Then you don't have to, employee first, customer first, what first? It's like people first. Yeah.
The third thing that I'd say then, once you have those first two, and that's the really important piece, is
Yes.
that you can't skip those first two. But the third one is recognizing that your financial stability is absolutely critical to your business longevity,
Yeah.
and your ability, it is very hard to grow a business if you're constantly worried about cash flow, if you're only running break even or worse, if the financial concerns are the first thing that you have every day, you can't really be, customer oriented, employee oriented. And so you have to set your business up in a way where, it has to be, there has to be enough profitability and enough financial stability. And so those three things in balance, the employees, the customers, and the financial piece, that's where the magic is, and so a lot of people, we all got started saying, or at least a lot of us saying, I will, I'll take any client that will pay me because I need clients,
Yeah.
and, a lot of us learned the hard way that over time that doesn't work very well, because we need the clients that we know how to deliver value for, that recognize the value that we have and that we're providing, and that's the stability of it, not just, who's willing to, pay us $1 and we'll do whatever they want to do.
That is so awesome. And those three things, before we get into the next question, beautifully said there, Peter. That is, those three things. And I'm going to translate those into more like an acronym that there is culture. So the people side of the things, their teamwork, health of the company, the people health. And then the customer, the second, that be close to the customer. If you're solving the problem that they have, the biggest problem that they have, you're helping them move forward. You are creating value. And the third is your cash. So it's culture, customer, cash. But the cash confidence, if you don't have cash confidence and you wake up with those cash flow concerns and the stability on the cash side, other things are hard to accomplish because you got to be in that cash confidence to help your team, help your customer. So as an entrepreneur, that has to be always number one.
Yeah. And it's funny because people often will say, well, which one of those is more important? Are employees more important than customers are, they all, are legs of a tripod, and without one of them, it falls over. And so they have to be in balance. And, but we do have to remember that at the end of the day, we're building the value receiver, is the customer, and, so that orientation has helped us a lot, over the years. And don't get me wrong, every entrepreneur has those moments where you lose a client, and you don't know what's going to happen, and there's fear. I mean, that's all part of it. That's all what gives us the experience and the fortitude, to move forward. But so it's not easy, but by focusing on that balance, there is significantly more stability.
Yeah. So the way I see it from a visual, for those listeners who are more visual, what I'm hearing you say, Peter, is that it's like if there are three pillars, and third pillar, okay, here's the third pillar. So third pillar. So your company as a building is these three pillars has to be in that harmony for the structure to sustain.
Yep.
Is the your people side of the business, which is culture, then your customers pillar, and your cash pillar. So you're building, the foundation is strong for your building. So new charter having these three pillars, IT by design having these three pillars, then you have a really, really solid structure, which is scalable. You can put as many floors as you want on that structure, as
Mm-hmm.
long as these three pillars are strong. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to put it in a visual
Yeah,
format.
I like
Uh,
it.
so the second question I have, Peter, for you is that you travel a lot, talk to so many MSPs, right? So that's like one piece. Second, you have now 30 companies in different part of the country, and you go talk to the customer, your customer. So let's talk about the customer a little bit. What is the biggest friction that you see for new charter customers in terms of what problem are you solving? What problem are you focused on to create value?
Yeah. For as much changes in technology and in our business, there are some things that have just stayed the same. And the problems that we've never really been able to overcome. And I'll share something, I don't want to be rude about it, but IT has not done a great job over the last 20 years of solving the deeper problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being, in my first IT job, when I was a teenager, and I was watching, even the more, seasoned professionals, you know, as they worked through, they were more concerned about the systems than they were the actual problem, that was being solved. And I got a saying that, great or good IT people solve problems, but great IT people really know what problem they're solving.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing that we see in it is that we IT, an IT provider, IT department, IT professionals, we have visibility into so much of a client organization.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have the most visibility. We understand their systems. We know their people and we have relationships with their people. We understand, how their data is structured. We should know their business and what their business challenges are. We understand the micro and macroeconomic, we can see all of that. And we look at it, we often have relationships with the CEO, and with the entry level staff, so we see end to end an organization that even a CEO doesn't necessarily see. We also know technology. We know what's out there. We know what's available. We know what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So for 20 years, we've used that. We've taken all that awareness and all of that visibility and access, and we do a pretty good job of fixing their printer when it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
We solve the little system issues. We don't go deep enough to solve business issues. And so the thing that we talk about at New Charter, consistently is IT is good at solving technical problems. It's good at solving system issues. It is not yet good at solving business challenges with technology. The deep consultative services are something that we should be able to do. And we've been talking about this for the better part of 20 years. That, when businesses don't have, when a business leader has a challenge, and says, I need to figure out how to do this, how to automate this, how to do this better. They don't typically go to IT because IT is they're the people who just keep the stuff running. And that's our opportunity. That's our future, is that the more that becomes commoditized in the service space, the more we're going to leave room for the very, very high value services where we're transforming business. But the problem with that is that we're not good at transforming business. We're not good at leading change. We're not good at understanding, how all of those pieces fit together. And we have to be better at that. It's a different mindset, different skill sets, than we've had in IT. But that's the future, is that IT should be the one leading the charge, in business change.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say, Peter, is that we solve problems as MSPs, as IT solution providers. But sometimes the problem that we are solving, we show up with a lot more technical side of the thing or systems side of the things, and
Yeah.
we don't take enough time to understand the problem and define the problem with a business acumen, with a business mindset. That okay, what problem I'm solving and how that problem is going to help that business move forward. But what is that one thing? So if I'm MSP, I'm listening to you and I want to apply this thinking. I want to take this mindset and I want to do something with it with my customers. Where can I start?
Yeah. If we go back to point number one, in that first, the tripod in terms of listening to customers, it's as simple as asking questions that get to the heart of business challenges, not just the technology challenges.
Mhm.
So here's an example. A couple of years ago, during COVID, there were a lot of manufacturing clients. There was a lot of turmoil. And I went and sat down with the CEO of a large, food manufacturing organization. They made, high end, you know, prepared meals, that were sold in grocery stores and and through food prep or meal prep organizations. And over the course of 2 hours, we spent the middle hour talking about the price of jalapenos of a 2 hour conversation. And it's, like with the IT provider, we were talking about the price of jalapenos. And how we got there is that spend the first half hour talking about what was keeping him up at night. Let's not talk about just IT or just security in your business. What's keeping you up at night? And he started listing some things out. Well, what he had in this, was a real conundrum.
Mhm.
They make, these jalapeno poppers. It's a huge part of what they do. And he said, I need to decide. He said, I can buy jalapenos whole. I can buy jalapenos sliced. I can buy jalapenos, sliced and then have them fill them, with, the filling. Or I could have, outsourced the whole thing and have them land, already packaged, here. Or I could go buy the plant that does the slicing and the filling. Those are all the things that were on the table for him. And he said, the problem is that the price of food right now is so volatile that by the time I make a purchasing decision, then I have to be able to, I go through my landed cost at the end of it is so much different than it was at the beginning because I can't track my price points all the way through.
Mhm.
He said, I can only track my price points at the beginning and the end of the process, and it keeps changing in the middle. And so I'm guessing, at all of this because I don't have a system that allows me to do those things.
Mhm.
He said, I think we have a system that could, allow for it, but we're doing this stuff on paper. How do we actually do something with that? And that's the kind of thing, like, it's an extreme example, but most of our IT mindsets are not capable of looking at that and problem solving that way. And so there's two things. Number one, we need to ask better questions. We need to
Mhm.
ask questions that are outside the realm of, are your systems broken? Are they secure? Have you refreshed your hardware? And we need to ask them the questions about what they're doing, not just what we're saying, will get us, that next project, and then we need to be able to know what to do with those questions. And so it's a different skill set. It's a different person who's going to be able to solve the system problem. And you might not have that in your MSP, but you should build relationships with people who do solve those things. And we should be building those skill sets, you know, in our companies as we go forward, because it's going to be more and more critical because that CEO could not go, I mean, he had been working with a consultant on this for a while, but the consultant didn't know the technology. So he was lost. He was just like, this is just I'm just hopeless in this. And I have to keep guessing at the cost of jalapenos and it's costing me millions of dollars. Most of us don't have $1 million jalapeno problem, but he did, and so being able to, and learning through those conversations, that's the future of what IT needs to be able to do.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, Peter, is that ask better questions. That's where I can start. Right. So asking right questions from the right people based on the persona, because that question may change for the persona. So you have different challenges than the COO, than the operations, than the HR, than other
Absolutely.
people. Right. So
Hmm.
knowing who you are asking questions from and knowing what question you can ask so that you understand their biggest danger. So you can use your strength as as a team member or as a company, the unique trademark strength that you have, using your strength to eliminate that danger for that customer or that
Yep.
persona
Yeah.
is where the relationship, even if that's not what you do as a number one thing, but that's where you show up as a person of values to create value.
Yep.
And
Yep.
everything else then from that relationship, the trust, that person who's going to show up to create value, people start respecting, and people are like, okay, what can I do more, right? So how can I buy more hardware from you? How can I buy this? Because you are a person who is coming to me and not limiting yourself with your, like, here are the three products that we sell. It's like, okay, I'm a problem solver. I'm solving problems to make sure that you get the right value from me by me solving that problem, which is most important problem for you.
Yep.
And that's a great frame. That's a great frame of reference, that if you are talking to a customer, it could be a QBR, it could be a weekly call, it could be a monthly call. Develop your skills to ask great questions,
Hmm.
and then take those questions to create value for the customer.
Yes. Yeah. And the biggest thing in that is you have to be able to ask the questions, have the conversation at the right level, so you can't have, an entry level IT tech having a conversation about large scale business problems. You have to be able to meet them, in that so that they feel like it's a valuable conversation. But the other key part is you have to be able to do something with that information.
Yes.
And so that's where understanding, what partnerships, what solutions are out there, even if you can't provide them yourselves, is also very important.
100%. And my last question to you is that a lot of people are struggling to even think about AI, but congratulations to you on even acquiring a capability which is going to help you with AI stuff. So, my
Yes.
question to you is, a lot of people are talking about this. And when I talk to a lot of AI experts, and we have a mastermind on this as well, but people are like, it's more of like very visionary thinking that, okay, I can do this, AI can do this, or is it mindset for like an AI mindset? But lot of MSPs are struggling to again take this AI and solve a problem for their customer. And I just want to take a perspective from you that what
Yeah.
are you thinking in terms of AI, and what are you doing as a AI that you recommend other MSPs can do for their customers?
Yeah. So, first of all, anyone who tells you that they, can predict the future of where this is going is lying. The smartest people in this are still going to be wrong, in a lot of it. I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and we don't like uncertainty. So we tend to follow the people who give us, who tell us their level of certainty or their idea of certainty. And that, I think, is a fool's errand. I think that's one of the most dangerous things right now, is to say, this is where it's going to go. And that's exactly where we're going to follow. The other challenge that we see is every time we have one of these big disruptions, whether it's, the cloud or security or AI, that's changing not just MSPs, but the face of business,
Hmm.
um, then there's obviously innovation that happens in the channel and in the industry. The emerging vendors come out, new tools come out. That's all very positive. It's a very positive response. Here's the problem with that, is that every time that we're looking, at for the vendors to innovate our solutions for us, it's going to take a while. And security is a great example of this. I remember when, a lot of what are now, the MDR vendors, and there's a category for it now, and people identify with it and they understand it, and it's required in spaces. I remember when that was just, a number of companies trying to do something new. And people didn't understand it. They didn't know how to orient towards it. They didn't know how to sell it. They didn't even know how to trust it. And because it was big change for them. And so it took a long time to take hold. And so, when it comes to AI, I think we're exactly where we should expect to be based on our prior experience. That there's all of this capability out there. There's new technology. Vendors are moving very aggressively, and well-funded vendors to help us, with solutions, but they're moving fast and, we don't necessarily know where they're going. And as organizations, we're left to answer questions, but we have probably more questions than we're able to answer at this point. And so, yeah, New Charter acquired a company called Orchestrate AI. This is it's an AI startup, and people have asked, so what are you doing with that? Yeah, there's some efficiency, a platform that drives efficiency in the service desk experience, but most importantly, there's an innovation center that we've morphed this into, that is our flywheel in terms of innovating consistently. And so the way that I see it is that we follow what is happening in the industry, what these vendors are doing, all of the massive innovation happening, but it's going to take a while for that to be really relevant to us. And I also can't afford, with a $350 million organization, to be really inconsistent and zigzagging all over the place. Say, okay, yeah, we're going to try and use this product. Oh, no, here's a better one. We're going to try to use that. And so our strategy is that I want to perpetually own the next 18 months of my AI innovation in my organization. And within 18 months of everything that we develop and everything that we create, we'll probably find off the shelf tools that will eventually replace 70 to 80% of that. But we're going to be on to that next frontier in it, because this is going to be a very fast, quickly iterating, fast moving thing. And we can't afford to wait for the vendors. And so some of the vendors, we have great partnerships with, they saw the acquisition and said, oh no, are you taking this in house, or are you trying to compete with us or make us irrelevant? And the answer is absolutely not. Build great stuff. We're going to use it, but we have to do things much faster than the vendor, community and the broad industry at scale will ever be able to give us, right away. We need to be able to influence our service processes tomorrow, and that won't happen, and so we have this conundrum of, can you follow the vendors where you have to kind of morph your business, into that, or can you afford to innovate yourselves? And that's one of the advantages that we have, that we're very thankful for, is that we are able to invest at a significant level, in this, while still working, very closely with what's happening in the industry. So my advice to MSPs that are out there is, number one, don't listen to the people who are speaking with certainty. Mm-hmm. Listen to the people who are speaking with curiosity. Mm-hmm. Number two, figure out how to own your strategy, because it's going to change fast. Mm-hmm. And number three, pay attention very, very well, and find alignment with, those vendor tools. But don't get so embedded that you can't, that you've got a 3-year strategy or a 5-year strategy where you're only going this direction, because we don't know what the future is going to hold.
Yeah. And what are you thinking in terms of use case there? It could be internal use case for MSP, or it could be for the customer. What are you thinking in terms of probably the biggest use case right now that we see for the MSP?
It's interesting, because I don't really separate those two very much. Everything should be for the customer.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference between building, efficiency and, improving the experience of the services that we deliver to the customer. And then there's the ability to enable them to use AI to solve those business problems that we were talking about. And so we have teams focused on both.
Okay.
But what we're not doing is just looking at, well, how do we make our, numbers better? How do we make our, obviously we want that. But when the North Star is how are we making things better for, going back to the beginning, our clients, our employees, and then the financial piece, that's where the magic happens. So any company that's looking at AI with the idea of I'm going to save 10% on my margins is going to get run over by the companies who are looking at it saying, how do I make things 50% better for my customer? And the margin comes in that because you're creating the value.
That is so awesome. That's a great frame of reference because business is a business. And when we are running a business and if we can solve one of the use case for ourselves, then basically what we're doing is we are becoming the R&D company. And then we take that proven value to multiple other businesses, then call them customers. So your R&D company can multiply by just helping others solve the same problem. So that's a great frame of reference that you shared there. That we should always be looking for what is the business problem that we can solve with AI that is worthwhile for not only our business, but then creating that associative connection, the associative thinking with the customer problems. Because business is a business, right? So no matter what you build and sell, at the end of the day, it's going to be built by people and it's going to be built for people. Yep. And now I appreciate you coming to my show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Anything that I did not ask you, but that you want to share with the channel?
I think the thing that I'll leave with is that it's for some people it's a bit of a scary inflection point, for MSPs right now, and I think that's where the real value is built. The organizations that understood and didn't live with fear of the cloud or fear of security issues and really dove into it, those were the ones that came out ahead during that. And so there is a lot happening with this, but there's a lot of opportunity in it as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. I always appreciate you, man, and you're making a huge impact on the channel. You're doing some great work. And the most admirable thing for me is the way your mindset is, the way you show up in the channel to give as a true go-giver. And it's not only your leadership team that I talk to, anyone that I talk to at New Charter, you guys are true go-givers. And you also do collaboration with other go-givers. It could be Bob Burger. I think that's the session that you guys did, right? The Go-Giver book author?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's such a foundation in this industry, and I know you all share that as well. And it's one of the things that we love to connect with you on. So, thanks for having me, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Let's grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Sunny's Silver Linings. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.